Welcome to Turning Pages, a series of in-depth conversations with authors about their works.
All right. Well, the Smiling Land, a freewheeling road trip to Newfoundland. Alan Doyle, the author, joins me on the program to discuss it. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me on.
So, Alan, did this book draw in any way on your youth as a tour guide? Like, did you find you were tapping into some of the same skills?
Oh my God, I got that job when I was 16. I couldn't believe my luck that a fellow from Petty Harbor was going to get a job in St. John's talking for a living. It was like the dream come true for a Doyle from Petty Harbor, I'll tell you. And I, I just, I fell in love as a 16-year-old with learning about Newfoundland and Labrador, but then telling everyone else about it. And I loved it so much, and it stayed with me my whole life, and here I am now 30 or 40 years later, and I still love it. I still love, exploring things that are in my own backyard, and I love hosting people from away. And, like most Newfoundlanders, heavily invested in making sure people have a good time when they come into our neck of the woods.
So did you get that job? Like, did you have some general knowledge of the area and the history, or is that something you had to kind of learn on the fly and you got it because of your personality and your way of telling a story?
It was the great stroke of luck and kindness from a high school teacher who used to work for the Department of Historic Resources, I believe. And she was aware of the fact that they were looking for summer students at one of the Newfoundland museums in St. John's. And she knew me as a talkative, outgoing grade 10 student, I guess at the time. And she told me I should go apply. And I did, and I got an interview and I got it. And it remains the only job interview I've ever had in my life, by the way. Yeah, one and done. And I loved it, and I really took to it. And I still, it's one of my, next to singing songs is probably my favorite thing to do.
Was learning about the history and then conveying that history like an easy thing because you loved it?
Yeah. I still like it. I still love and I mean, it's true about other places. It's also made my job as a touring musician easier because, a lot of that downtime in the daytimes that most people who are touring musicians sort of lament. I love having 5 or 6 hours in the daytime to go walk around, a town that I've never been to and learn if I like it or not. I don't even mind visiting places that I turn out I don't like. But at least I got there myself to learn that I don't like it. That's cool.
Discovery is important to you.
Yeah. And new things. And I suppose growing up in a little fishing town that's fairly, cut off from the rest of, the part of, Newfoundland and Canada, of course, and all of the world before the internet and stuff, is that and we didn't have a car or anything like that, so getting out of Petty Harbor was difficult. And I just dreamt of a time when I could do that, when I could go, get on an airplane, which I never did till I was almost 20, like I just want to, romanticize the whole notion of seeing everything that there is to see. And I remain, I remain enamored by that possibility.
So going further and further afield and exploring and stuff, it's very important to you. But I find it interesting. You kind of close the loop and you come back home and the last little bit is about, kind of a short walk to get a coffee in your own neighborhood.
Yeah. It was just a real honest way of wrapping up a story of sort of greater, tourism or discovery or, curiosity about finding these curious things in the far-reaching corners of my own province. And then I walk to the coffee shop and I go like, oh my God, I forgot to talk about, 6 of the things that are within a golf shot of my backyard, like literally my backyard. And I sort of was happy to do that because it was an honest sort of mistake, if you will. But it was also like just proved the point that you never know what cool things are under your nose all the time, especially if you live in a place like St. John's, like you've probably been walking past, a park bench that has incredible historical significance, and you just haven't stopped to look at it yet.
Well, you get that moment more than once during your travels, because obviously you end up in an airstrip that Amelia Earhart, took
Yeah.
off from, and initially you discount it.
Well, I kind of forgot about it. To be honest with you, I was in Harbor Grace, and I went to Harbor Grace to look at this cathedral that friends of mine are reinventing, and to look at a few of the historical landmarks, because Harbor Grace was vying for the capital of Newfoundland along with St. John's for a century or so, and it was a very significant town in the development of Newfoundland and Labrador. And I went around, saw all the historical stuff and saw all the stuff, and then a friend reminded me, "So did you go see the airstrip?" And I was like, "What?" And it's like the Amelia Earhart airstrip. I was like, "Oh yeah, wow, I totally forgot that. That's up on the hill up here." And I'd never actually seen it. Somewhere in my mind, of course, I knew that it was there somewhere, but I'd never seen it. And I went up and looked at it and went, "Wow, look at that." Constantly surprised. And as I've been saying, like the way I pitched this book to the publisher was, follow me around Newfoundland and Labrador because I knows everything about Newfoundland and Labrador, and then watch me discover I don't know very much about it at all.
That dynamic is, I think, most evident in your relationship with your son,
Yeah.
and
Well,
and the
'cause
questions that he asks, and the answers that you provide or fail to provide. And I'm curious, could this book have been what it is without that dynamic?
no, no, no. It was part of the great charm of it, of course, was to do a family trip and to, our son is, almost 20 now, and he was like sort of 17, 18 when we did these trips, and me and my wife figured this is probably the last time he's ever going to come with us, like, and so we plowed him into the minivan and made him drive to Battle Harbor, Labrador with us. And and it's just the having that kind of, next generation eyes to see things through was very fun and informative, and a very special family moment.
Now, is that something you had to kind of negotiate with your son and your wife, like kind
No,
of
we
being
made him
included?
do it. No, we just made him do it. That's it.
And then including him in the book, like he was fine with that, or?
Oh yes, oh my God, he loved that part. He still does. Yeah, he wishes he was in it more. He's a Doyle. He wants to be on. He wants to have the light on him all the time, the same way as the rest of us.
It's the stage of the page.
Yeah, fine. Any stage will do.
So as I said, like the itinerary, there are places and places you've been before, and then places you've yet to go. How did you build out the itinerary? Like, did you kind of look at the map and say, like, this is what I want to include, or how did you kind of figure out what the travels would be?
Um, Most of them were sort of obvious to me in that I wanted to hit the places that had the best story to tell. And the story that I was interested in primarily was the one to go to the places that have paved a new way forward. That the old Newfoundland of, small fishing towns all participating in the inshore cod fishery in small boats is, kind of died when I became an adult, with the cod moratorium and stuff. And to go to the places that had that sort of are defining what the new Newfoundland and Labrador is, and whether it's ecotourism or whether it's, archaeological finds, or whether it's, geography or whatever, and each place has its own merit in that regard. And then it was sort of to sort of lay that over a lens of like geographical representation, so I wanted to do at least one place in Labrador, and I wanted to do something on the South Coast, and I wanted to do something on the West Coast and the North Coast, and so I sort of made what seemed to be a logical and a doable itinerary.
So once you map out kind of where you want to go, obviously there are individual trips. You've got your family along for some of them, but you do kind of end up solo on some. Was that just out of necessity in terms of getting it done, or they just
Yeah,
didn't want to?
a couple of them were just like, um, a couple of them were just solo trips that I just for convenience, just ran off and did on my own. Like the Harbor Grace one I mentioned, I did that one on my own just because I blasted out and did it over a day. And I kind of wanted it to be that, and then like I did one with just me and Henry, and I did one with just me and Joanne, and then I did, most of it was all three of us, and then the very last chapter is me, oddly enough, going to where most people will discover Newfoundland first, over on the west coast of Newfoundland, where the ferry lands, and that I intentionally left that till last, because I kind of wanted the book to start with a farewell, and to start with a farewell and to end with a hello.
Yeah, you obviously talk about going to farewell. Like, did you land on that as like, oh, this is a perfect opener because it's such a weird place name to like start with?
Partly because it's just a weird place to start, but also because if there's one place that is the shining example of Newfoundlanders' resilience and constant ability to reinvent themselves, it's Fogo Island, Newfoundland. That place, I mean, for many of the parts of coastal Newfoundland, they had that sharp left turn when the Cobb moratorium happened in the early 1990s. But Fogo Island has had a dozen of them, like in the last 2 centuries. Like they've just constantly, they've had a dozen moratoriums, and they still, the place is more successful now than it's ever been, and they're just an incredible group of determined people that I'm proud to talk about.
You talk about people, but you also talk to people, and you obviously acknowledge those folks in the latter part of the book. In terms of like research for things, like you said, you mapped out kind of where you wanted to go and thought about kind of what the journey was. Did you do a lot of research about the places beforehand, or did you kind of go in blind and ask questions of these people and then get what you needed from them, and then, kind of maybe backfill with more information afterwards?
Definitely the latter. Yeah, for the most part. I wanted to go in to places the way tourists might go into places, not the way sort of, historical researchers will go into places. Because ultimately this book is for people who are just probably standard, your average person that might want to jump on a plane or in a car and come see it. So I wanted my eyes to be sort of unprepared, if that's the proper way to say it, to go and not predetermined to look for stuff. Like if you drive into Harbor Grace, what do you see? And without knowing there's an airstrip up on the hill, what do you see when you go in there? What meets your eye first? What does it look like? What does it sound like? What does Corner Brook look like from the hill? Like what is it? Just that I like, and then that I like that idea of looking at it with almost like an unprepared eye, and then having done the days and done the chats and then go research about what I had seen, and in some cases what I had missed as well.
I know you're taking voice notes. Were you writing notes at all, or did, like, when you were taking pictures, were you kind of like trying to tag, oh, this is this, and kind of keep tabs on things?
Stuff, oh yeah, like oh my God, I have a folder with, I don't know, 750 photos or something for that I took in videos, and but I dictated most of it into my phone, all the notes as I was going. Because that's the way I do stuff now, even songwriting. I type it or dictate it into my phone, because I have an attic full of notebooks with song ideas in them that I lose or forget about or whatever. I'm a total handover to the new technology of having your entire life on your phone in your hand.
When you have that many notes, do you end up with some that end up like your guitar under the bed, like that they get lost for several years and collect dust?
I'm sure. Like I'm just waiting, in all honesty, because this is only the second day of talking about the book. It's only been out a couple of days. I'm waiting for the various Newfoundland and Labrador, enthusiasts to point out the things I've forgotten. That's going to come.
Was there like a fact-checking process for this book then?
Oh yeah. I mean, like you say, all the stuff that we, because it was a book about a real place and a book about a real town or real people or whatever. I wanted to make sure I made every effort that everything I reported in this book was accurate. And that's not to say that I might not have shagged something up, and that's also not to say that there might be cases in here that I just totally forgot something or missed it or it didn't occur to me on the day that I was traveling there, so I forgot to look at it. Or that's all, because that's all part of traveling, right? That's all part of a natural journey. It's not meant to be a completist travel log. Rather, this is what I went there. This is when I went there. This is who I went with, and this is what I saw and talked about.
It admits its limitations.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. You mentioned that you songwrite via the Notes app. Is there any like parallel to songwriting and writing for this, or are they two completely different types of thing?
Well, they all sort of come from the same muse, right? About trying to make something that's satisfying to you and hopefully to others, right? And so the intention and I guess the origins of them are the same, and then the layout of them the actual execution of them is completely different, right? Like, if you're going into the second day writing a song, it's probably not a very good song, like, if you don't get it done in an afternoon or an evening or a day, then it's probably not a great song. And whereas, of course, a book, like my joke has been forever since I started writing books, is the hardest thing about writing a book is writing a book. Everything else is easy, and there is so much of it. Like, even if there's not so much to it, there's so much of it, right? There's a lot of words, a lot of typing, a lot of time, a lot of hours, a lot of, and so the footprint of time that it takes to write a song versus the footprint of time that it takes to write a book are radically different.
So it's the activity of the writing of the book that's the laborious part?
Yeah, it's literally, I mean, it sounds like a joke, but it's true. It's the hardest part about writing a book is writing a book. Is like the amount of the actual sitting down and writing it out. That is the hardest part. Like, editing it's easy. Making it better is easy. Coming up with an idea for it is easy. Finding the source material is easy. No, just actually writing a book is the hardest part about writing a book.
You're a storyteller, not just a writer, and obviously known for, telling yarns on stage in between songs and via songs. Do you find that you have to then tailor things in a different way for the written page, or are you able to kind of convey that storytelling voice that you would have if I was to meet you on the street?
Yeah, my effort is to have the effect of them be the same. But I learned even very on my first book that the execution of those two things is different, and the skill set required to have somebody hear something from you and read something from you and have them react exactly the same way requires a little different set of skills. And I'll give you a good example. Like, you and I could stand up in a pub and I'd tell you about, Jerry from Petty Harbor. And every time Jerry said something, I would put on Jerry's voice, and you'd know that the person who was speaking these words is now Jerry, And so when you go to write out that story, you can't obviously put a dialect on Jerry's words, right? They don't, even if you try to spell them differently, no, you can't be sure that the audience, or rather the reader, will interpret that in the same way. So like, for example, writing out dialogue is a specific skill set in storytelling, in the writing of storytelling. And I remember discovering on my first book that I did not know how to do that. I didn't know where to put commas. I didn't know where quotes should start and end. I didn't know how much. I like literally, and I'm not even speaking about anything other than the actual academic skill to do it. And lucky for me, my neighbor and co-creator of the musical we just did, Telltale Harbor, is a wonderful novelist and writer named Ed Rich, who's really good at that. And I remember going over and explaining this problem to him, and I expected the explanation to take a long. He said, "I know what you're doing. I know." He said, "Look, writing out dialogue is hard. And he makes some suggestions, and he helped me with it early on." And so yeah, it's again, like it all goes back to what I just said. I swear to God, the hardest thing about writing a book is writing a book. It's like the um the coming up with the stories is no problem, And but yeah, but to answer your question, I try to have the effect of those two things to be the same.
Hmm.
Um, and it takes a little bit of adjustment and learning to make sure that what you're writing is having the same effect as what you would say.
Yeah, the thing about voice makes absolute sense. Like if you were storytelling, you could, inflect or pitch differently to
Huh.
kind of convey. What was the advice that Ed gave you to correct things with dialogue or help you kind of?
I mean, it'd be a pretty boring radio interview to go through it all, to be honest with you. But it's like just structural things. Like, for example, I'm just trying to think of one. I probably had in a story that had a character. Let's just say Jerry again for a laugh. Uh, Jerry said that he was cold, and then quotes, "I am cold." And then Jerry walked over and got the bottle of water. That's what I would have written. And Ed would look at that, or a good dialogue writer would look at it and go, just that could be just like uh, uh, there would be quotes, and it would say, "I'm freezing," quote end quotes. Jerry sipped the water as he walked to the door.
Right, to kind of contract things. I was curious
So
about that
to-
because the interplay between you and your son sometimes feels, like I think you get to the heart of kind of that like quippy back and forth, and you're maybe like losing patience with each other, and whether that actually is how it was said in the car versus
I
how
think
it
I
reads
think
on the
the stuff.
page.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never thought about it to be sweet, but I think that's those exchanges I pretty much just wrote verbatim because that's the way families talk, right?
Okay.
You know, and you know, I guess one of the funny things with me and Henry is whenever I go right on, he knows the conversation's over. It's like, okay, Dad's not interested in hearing anything else or whatever. Yeah, right on. And or it's just those kind of specific family things
So
that I hope are reflected in there.
it's not you using your editor's pen to kind of truncate it. It's already been truncated because you have a
Oh no,
shorthand.
it couldn't possibly trust me if you're trying to get you know a long chat out of your 18-year-old son in the back of a van in the seventh hour of the drive. Good luck with that.
Speaking of drives, obviously there are a lot of miles logged. Like, did you have a full sense of like how much you'd be on the road for this?
No, no, and that was one of the great discoveries, was like that was that the vastness of Newfoundland and Labrador even escaped me. Like it's just we left St. John's and we drove to St. Anthony on the northern tip of Newfoundland. Then we took a ferry across. It lands in Quebec, and then you drive back across the Newfoundland Labrador border, and you drive across the southern Labrador Highway, and then you arrive in Mary's Harbor, and then you take a ferry to go out to Battle Harbor, and like it's almost ridiculous in a way that you could still possibly be in the same province, having traveled, you know, approaching thousands of kilometers. It's a wild one.
Did that bump again up against your ability to fall asleep in any moving vehicle? Did you miss
No,
anything?
it was the crowning glory. It was the crowning glory of my sleeping. I can sleep anywhere, and my poor wife, long suffering wife, has drove me all over Newfoundland and Labrador.
That's one way to tour the province, I suppose, when it's that big. Uh, was there anything that you wanted to do for this book that didn't happen? Right, like I mean, you come from a place where the fishing industry is big, and the stories are the one that got away. Was there something that didn't happen?
Yeah, lots actually. I mean, one of the things I say early in the book is I didn't go everywhere, and like for example, I didn't really go to the coast of Labrador, to the northern coast of Labrador, I should say. I went to the southern corner, which is Battle Harbor, but I never really went to like Natwashish or Nain or Car or any of those places. I never got to go up to the Torngat national park in the northern tip of Labrador. I didn't go to Lab West at all, Labrador City or Wabush. I didn't go to the very south coast of Newfoundland to like Francois or Grey River or any of those places. I really just glossed over the entire Burin Peninsula on the way to St. Pierre. Um, I talked about Fairland on the southern shore quite a bit because I had this great development there, but I barely talked about my own hometown of Petty Harbor or Trepassey or Bay Bulls or Witless Bay or, all those places that I played. I drove a car through the Codroy Valley, but didn't really spend much time there. I mean, like lots of stuff I would do again in a heartbeat.
You hit the squid jigger, but you didn't hit all the venues.
Exactly.
I did not expect. I mean, maybe it's just like failure of my geography teacher or my memory that Saint Pierre, as you said, you end up there. You end up in France.
Yeah. It was one of the. I wasn't sure what to do about that chapter. In all honesty, I wasn't sure if it belonged, but then I said, no, I think I'm gonna include Saint Pierre because it is yet another reason for people to consider coming to Newfoundland and Labrador because you have this wacky opportunity to go to Europe, like on a 55-minute ferry ride or a short airplane or whatever. And Saint Pierre, as I describe, or I hope I describe in the book, is 3 streets of France. Like it's not like France. It is France. It's absolutely bizarre that it is where it is. And the history of the place is bonkers. Like, with all the smuggling and all the prohibition stuff. And it's really, really incredible.
Is that your biggest hope for the book? That people will come? That this book will generate interest in Newfoundland and Labrador and the tourism there?
Yeah, I mean to use the baseball terms, because the
Field of Dreams.
The good, the triple, the home run is if people read it and like it, and that's always enough for me. That's great. But the grand slam is if people read it and they were on the fence about visiting Newfoundland and Labrador, and then they decide to come, and follow around, and maybe this book provides a little bit of a roadmap for part of their trip or for all of their trip or whatever. And back to being the tour guide, at the Newfoundland Museum as a 16-year-old, I just really, really want people to come and fall in love with the place. And the fact that that's important to me and is important to a lot of people, and I would dare say most people from Newfoundland and Labrador, is one of the reasons why visiting Newfoundland and Labrador should be on your list, because there's a big crowd of people there that want to make sure you have a good time when you come, and what's better than that?
It's funny, when you were saying a baseball metaphor, I thought you were going to say, like the Field of Dreams. If you write it, they will come. But the triple and the home run and the grand slam are great metaphors as well. The Smiling Land, All Around the Circle in My Newfoundland and Labrador, out now through Penguin Random House. Alan, thanks very much for joining me on the program. Congrats on the release of the book.
Thanks so very much for having me. What a great chat.